Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.
Flamer is the story of Aidan Navarro, a pretty normal kid who feels anything but normal. As he tries to understand who he is and where he fits over the summer between middle and high school, he's looking forward to a bit of peace at Boy Scout summer camp where, as Aidan puts it, I understand how things work. Even here, though, things go astray and Aidan experiences an emotional and spiritual crisis that leads him to consider suicide. I'm Doug Farmwald, filling in this week for Gail Martin, and joining me today is Mike Corrado, author and illustrator of Flamer, which is this year's selection for the St. Joseph County Public Library's One Book, One Michiana. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hey, Doug, thanks for having me.
So, we're going to get started, and you're going to walk us through a Philippine cuisine. Aidan in the book is Filipino, and you are as well.
I am, yep.
So we're looking forward to that. So I'm going to kind of let you lead a little bit on the cooking.
Great.
But before we get into that, I got a couple of questions about the book, and hopefully you don't mind if I start chopping a little bit while we do that.
Yeah, as long as I can cry.
That's right. That's right. This is a really powerful book, and I'm not sure I'm the demographic you were going for, but I've really found a lot of things to relate to it. What led you to bring Aidan to life?
Well, you know, Aidan's story is very much parallel with my own experience as a teenager. So while it's a work of fiction, it's kind of semi-autobiographical. And I wanted to write a book for people who are like me, who are young folks trying to figure things out, or maybe older folks too, who are still figuring things out.
And do you think, in large part, that people are sort of tracking the message that you're trying to get out?
I think for the most part, yes. Okay. Yeah, I've had some really great feedback from teens and adults. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, most of your earlier work is beginning readers or even lap books. And I wish I'd have had some of those when my kids were that little. And one of the main characters, little Elliot, who is the sweetest little polka dot elephant, and his friend Mouse. When I read through these, I see a lot of similarities between Aidan and little Elliot. Does that track with you, or am I just reading into things?
I mean, it makes sense because I feel like little Elliot is very much based on my inner child. And Aidan is kind of what I like to think of as a braver version of my teenage self. So
okay,
yeah.
So it's always from your point of view,
right?
Now, why a graphic novel? With the children's books, obviously, it's picture books as much as anything else. But what led you to choose a graphic novel?
I think the most important thing for me is that I was a huge comic book nerd when I was growing up. So I wanted to present the story in a way that I know I would have wanted to read it when I was a teenager.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started cooking.
Yeah.
And you tell us just a little bit what you're doing. I'm going to keep working over here.
Yeah, sure. We're going to start out today with a traditional Filipino dish. It's called chicken adobo. And there are a lot of different ways to make chicken adobo. It's different than Mexican adobo.
Well, I was going to ask that, because I've had chicken adobo at Mexican restaurants.
Yeah. Usually the Filipino adobo is vinegar-based, and it almost always has soy sauce as well. Mm-hmm. But there are lots of variations. So today we're making a coconut milk version. Yeah.
So what do we need to do?
Well, we'll get our heat going here, and that's the wrong burner.
I'm always doing that in my home kitchen.
So I just started on kind of a medium heat,
okay.
And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of coconut oil.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just going to let that melt if it's still solid and get a little shiny, and coat the bottom of the pot.
And we've got some peppercorns and garlic and bay leaf that are going in there.
Yeah. So I think there are about 2 teaspoons of whole peppercorns and 1 teaspoon of ground pepper. Um, and it's great. They add these like pops of flavor while you're eating it. And you're gonna throw some garlic in here. You can throw as much garlic as you want in any Filipino dish, I feel like.
Right, it's hard to have too
Yeah.
much.
So you're just gonna leave that in there for a few minutes to get the garlic fragrant and toasty. Yeah.
Well, and while that cooks up, yeah, explain why you chose a graphic novel. Are there pros and cons to that format?
I can't think of cons right now, but there are a lot of pros to a graphic novel. It's such a cool medium because you've got the words and you've got the images. So just like how picture books are so powerful for little kids, I think comic books, they say.
And I think comic books and graphic novels are getting more of acceptance. I mean, you had a really breakthrough graphic novel with Mouse,
Yes,
which sort of, I think, legitimized the format. Before that, it was always just Batman comic books.
Yeah.
Which I love Batman comic books, but it wasn't taken as serious literature.
Right.
And I think with Mouse, it kind of broke that barrier, and something like Flamer is clearly serious literature.
Yeah, I think that's the misconception, right? Is that comics are always kind of superhero stuff, which was important to me as a teenager. I think it's important to recognize that's very valid as well. But graphic novels, it's a medium, right? So just like film and TV, it's like you can tell so many different stories with it.
Now, with Aiden in particular, you said it's semi-autobiographical. How hard is it to put yourself out there like that for the public, or is it empowering?
It's both, right? I think anything that is close to your heart that you're putting out there, it's scary, right? But at the same time, yeah, it does feel empowering to be able to tell my story. And some advice that my editor gave me is when you're telling a story, there just has to be that element of truth to it. And that's what's going to make it a good story. So this is sort of my truth that I'm putting out there. So, yeah.
Well, and as I said, I'm probably not the demographic you were aiming for, but I found an awful lot to relate to in that book. I was a scout leader for 10 years. My sons were in scouts. In high school, was a comic book nerd, was a D&D nerd all through college. I still DM sometimes for my kids.
Nice.
So, a lot of that really resonated, and it really helped me hopefully see things through another person's eyes. I've been on one side of it, and I think this helped me see the other side. So hopefully that's kind of what you were going for.
Yeah, I think the important thing about books, right? It's important for someone to see themselves in a book. So, I made this book for, like I said, folks like me. But I think it's important to be able to read a book about someone else's experience that you don't have, so that you can kind of gain understanding and compassion for all different walks of life.
Which is why representation is so important in all media. It's not. Sure. We hear about it, and it often sounds like, well, it's some quota thing. We have to tell a female story, we have to tell a black story, we have to tell a Filipino story, and that's really not the case.
Yeah.
It's not about quotas, but it's about understanding.
Yeah, totally. And I just want to say, I put the chicken in skin down. I'm using thighs and drumsticks. I really like the dark meat. And I'm going to quick mix some sauce to go in there.
And we'll get that cooking down.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to put Flamer together?
Well, it took years. I mean, I started it in, I had the idea maybe like 2010 or so, and kind of fiddled around with the idea, like on and off. And then I finally,
before we spill it.
Oh, thanks. I finally sat down and wrote it in 2014 or 15, and then sold it. And then it had to sit on the back burner while I worked on other projects.
So it sort of just matured in the back of your head?
Yeah. So it finally came out in 2020 in the fall.
Now, I'm going to skip topics a little bit again. What's going in the sauce here?
So I just put in a can of coconut milk. I always use the full fat because you want all that flavor. And we're doing half a cup of soy sauce and half a cup of vinegar. I like to use rice vinegar for a little extra tang.
Okay. And that just gets mixed up and you pour that right over.
Yeah, so we'll just whisk that up.
All right. And if you like, I can whip that up and pour it over while you can start on the pancit.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
And tell us a little bit about what actually is pancit. What is that?
So pancit is like a noodle dish. There's also, soy sauce in there. We love our soy sauce.
Oh, I like that sizzle.
Yeah, it's really gratifying, right? Yeah, and so that's going to come to a boil, and then you're just going to set it to like a simmer for an hour. I usually like to flip the meat
About halfway through,
yeah.
Sure.
And then we'll reduce the sauce after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's going to be cooking, and we'll start on the pancit.
Yeah.
So what do you need for that?
Well, I need 1 second.
It's always easier when no one's watching, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Usually I'm just at home doing my thing.
Okay. Well, and while you get that ready, we are going to take a quick break and kind of reset here a little bit and let our chicken cook down a little bit. While we do that, why don't you take a look at some of the illustrations from Flamer and get a feel for Mike's style as an illustrator. Welcome back. We're here discussing this year's One Book, One Michiana Selection Flamer with author and illustrator Mike Corrado. Thank you again for being here today. And we're going to get into our next segment. So the chicken adobo is cooking down. I'm going to take care of that and let the sauce reduce. You're going to start another dish. Tell us about that.
Yeah, before that, I also want to mention I added some bay leaves and a little more water before that started simmering. But now I'm going to make pancit bihon. Pancit is a noodle dish, and there are also a lot of variations. So yeah, first we're just gonna throw some.
And as always, all the recipes will be on the Dinner in a Book website, so you can certainly find them. You don't have to write everything down as we're doing it.
Yeah. Just putting in some cooking oil and red onion there. Cook that up first.
So chicken's plated, and we're going to let that sauce reduce. Then while you cook up those vegetables, I'm going to start on some of the ingredients for dessert.
Great.
So dessert is
my
always
favorite.
a good thing.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the book again. One of the things I noticed about Aidan in the story is that institutions are important to him. The Boy Scouts, the Catholic Church, and they're also, at the same time, kind of a source of strength and a source of belonging, but a source of stress. So what role do you see in Flamer for those sorts of institutions?
Yeah, I know for me personally, I got a lot out of, my scouting upbringing. I feel like I really came into my own. Like, it gave me a lot of tools to not just like survive in the wilderness, but kind of, tackle life in a lot of ways. And yeah.
No, that's one thing that really struck me is I was a scout leader for 10 years with my sons. And you're right, it's not, there are merit badges for all kinds of things. Well, yes, we do a lot of camping. There's all kinds of other things to do too.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think with Aidan's Catholic upbringing, he has a lot of faith. He's very devout. But he also runs into conflict, right? About how can I be all these different things? And I think a lot of us run into that as human beings. That's just intersectionality, right? Of like,
Well, and I think it must be especially troubling for Aiden in the book because both the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts are not inclusive for gays.
well, for
And he's-
scouting, yeah,
It's better.
it's getting better.
It's getting better.
On paper, it's becoming more inclusive, but I
Right.
think there's still a lot of work to do. And yeah,
And so
and
you
there's
run,
the church.
and you run into this dichotomy where you really want to be part of it. It's something that's important to you. Aiden's faith is important to him. Scouts are important to him, but the organization is saying you're not quite right,
Yeah,
and that,
it's a tough thing to.
well, especially as an
To swallow,
adolescent,
yeah.
because I think at that stage we're all kind of trying to figure out who are we, and when you have a source of identity like like your church or like Scouts or something that tells you not that identity,
Yeah,
that makes it really hard to be true to yourself.
yeah, for sure. And what's difficult for Aiden is he's thinking like, I think I might be gay, but also I've been taught that that's something bad, and I'm not. I don't want to be bad, and I don't want to be a bad person. So what do I do? Yeah.
And another thing comes right out of that. At one point in the book, Aiden's thinking I might be gay. He goes, but gays like other boys. I don't like boys. They're mean. They're mean and they're
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah.
And so I think you whether intentionally or not, you kind of address the theme of toxic masculinity as well.
Yeah.
Because the reason those other boys are so mean is because they perceive Aiden as being different, not quite right.
Yeah, and that's a tale as old as time, right? Like, if something's different, it must be bad. There are a lot of people that are trying to fix Aiden in the book, right? Because they see him as being different, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and at one point, one of the other boys, Mark, even bullies him to the point that provokes Aiden to fight back and knock out a tooth,
Yep.
which conversely gets him a lot of respect
Yep.
that he knocked the other guy down. But Mark's motivation that he talks about is, well, I'm trying to help you out, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make you fit in more with us.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the issues that we have with that sort of toxic masculinity come from people who don't quite know where they fit, because no one fits exactly, and they don't know how much leeway they have. And so the only thing they do is sort of exaggerate that masculinity.
Yeah, I think, young boys especially, they feel like they have to really prove their manhood, right? And so they will kind of act out. And by the way, I'm just throwing these crystal noodles. This pan might be,
Just a little on the small side for that.
yeah, but basically it's a liter of broth I've put in here, and we just kind of want to get these wet so that
And then they'll soak up some of that broth.
yeah, and they'll start loosening up here.
Okay. And following that theme, proving your manhood, one of the things that I know has been sort of an issue with the book is the language. And I think that's missing the point. I think anyone who's spent time around adolescent males understands that using that coarse language is almost a rite of passage.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that proving I'm
Yeah.
the man. I'm a grown up.
I'm grown. I do what I want.
Yeah, I feel like I cursed more when I was a
I
teenager
did
than I
too.
do as an adult.
And I think that's something that most people don't understand.
Yeah,
And that has led the language, and as well as Aiden defining his sexuality, to a fair amount of censorship and
Yeah.
some controversy around the book. As an author, how does that affect you?
I mean, the first thing that really bothers me is just thinking about all the readers who I wrote this book for not being able to access it. I mean, this is a book that's supposed to let people know, like, hey, you're valuable, you're worth being in this world, regardless of whatever, and so that's the hardest thing for me, is thinking about, I'm trying to help folks and others are trying to take that help away. Yeah, and then it's personally just it is difficult to navigate sometimes. It's just more time away from other work that I could be working on, and also, you know, just people being unfriendly and saying awful things to you like that. You know,
And
no one wants that.
And I've read some headlines about different school boards that have objected to the book. Have you had predominantly good or bad feedback?
It's predominantly good, and I think there's a very vocal minority right now that are challenging books. You know,
So are we about
and
reduced enough
that's
here?
reduced. Yeah, you want
if
to
you wanna
scrape
hand-
that
yeah,
scrape
hand me
that
a
stuff
spatula.
up. Yeah.
And I will put this over the chicken. Coming towards the end of this segment, what is the most gratifying reaction you've had to the book so far?
I think for me, when teenagers tell me like, "Wow, I've never read a book that I, you know, see myself in so much," that's really the best feeling for me.
So, well, go ahead.
Oh, and you know, I've actually talked to adults too, like people my age who are like, "I've never had a book my whole life that I saw myself in until now." So, you know, that really means something to me too.
And that's not, that's not just the sexuality aspect of it. That is, the cultural aspect, the ethnic aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that is important. I think that's one of the things that helped me relate to the book is I saw aspects of myself. The comic book nerd, the D&D nerd.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, I think it's a niche story, but you know, the themes are universal enough that you know, there's something for everyone in there.
Well, I think it was a really powerful book. I really enjoyed it. One of the things I like about One Book, One Michiana is it gets me to read books I might not have otherwise. This being one of them that's I've really enjoyed. And one of the reviews I noticed, you put it right on the top, "This book will save lives." Is that an exaggeration, or do you think that's pretty honest?
I think any book can save a life if someone reads it and knows that their life is valuable because of reading it.
And just knowing that you're not alone. Someone else can understand.
Yeah, totally.
And there was one panel in the book that I really liked. It's where Aiden finally realizes that I am enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the theme of the book. Whoever you are, wherever you are enough. Now we're going to take one more break, come back with our final feast here and some dessert. While we do that, let's take a look through Mike's complete bibliography. Welcome back. We're here talking about Flamer this week on Dinner and a Book with author and illustrator Mike Curato. And our chicken adobo is done as our Philippine feast progresses. And Mike, you finished your other dish,
Pancit Bihon.
which is sort of a fried noodles and vegetables.
That's
and
right.
you are putting together the best part, our dessert.
Yes, this is a traditional Filipino dessert called halo-halo. Again, lots of variations, but basically it's like sweet beans, fruit, all sorts of toppings, shaved ice. So we're just gonna throw a bunch of them in this sundae cup here. And we're gonna throw some condensed milk on top of it, sweetened condensed milk.
And then you sent me a recipe earlier for some ube ice cream, and I made that up ahead of time.
Yes.
So hopefully I did okay.
Yeah, it looks great. Love ube. Ube is like a purple yam
But with a sweetness to it.
with a sweetness. And I know, like, for Western folk who aren't used to beans in your dessert, it sounds weird, but like, just trust me. It's really good stuff. This is ube ayala, which is like an ube jam.
With coconut, yes?
Yeah, sometimes there's coconut in it. And we're gonna throw this condensed milk on top here. And then the ice cream goes on top.
And we are just about ready.
All right. There you go.
Well, as they say, I'm going to have dessert first.
Yes.
And so as we do, I want to thank Mike Corrado for joining us today. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank Gail Martin for letting me stand in today. And most especially thank St. Joseph County Public Library for One Book West Michiana and this year's selection, Flamer. Good food, good friends, good books make for a good life. See you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.